Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's main event featuring brother versus brother. In the red corner, from Indianapolis, Indiana, an ER doctor, a Christian, a Republican, Dr. David Blank. And in the blue corner, hailing from San Francisco, California, a computer scientist, an atheist, a Democrat, Dr. Doug Blank. Now it's time for the Blanks to rumble!
Hello, today is January 17th, 2021, and today we are going to talk about the January 6th Capitol event right now. Okay, so hello, brother.
Hey, brother. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I mean, we've talked a little bit since the new year, but we really haven't talked anything political since, I guess, right after the election.
Right.
So here we are. A few things have happened. But what I'd like to ask you today is, how would you describe what happened on January 6th at the Capitol?
Yeah, I'm kind of, I was just talking to somebody yesterday that we were flipping through a couple of different channels on the television, and most of them have started calling it the Trump riots or the Trump chaos or the Trump assault on the Capitol, which I thought was a little bit amusing in that they've already, the media narrative is he is the sole person responsible for all this, which is quite a bit different from the media take on a whole lot of other riots that have happened in the past year.
Okay, so I want to ask you about cause and effect in a minute, but first I want to get your just how you describe what happened. How would you tell your grandkids what happened on January 6th, 2021?
Yeah. One thing that it is not was just a rally of a bunch of people that kind of got carried away and moved into a different, kind of a different course. So I think on retrospect and looking at specifically some characters that have, showed up on the FBI list, there were clearly quite a few people that were there with the specific intent to cause some damage and to assault the Capitol. There were people that were there with military gear. You know, who goes to a political rally with a Kevlar helmet? Who goes to a rally with a bulletproof vest? You know, who goes to a rally with weapons? I did see one report that there was at least one person who had some pipe bombs, although I haven't seen that reported anywhere else, and I didn't see that that the FBI had picked up somebody. I didn't see anything further on that, so I don't know if that's true or not.
It is true. There were real pipe bombs placed around Washington, D.C., but as far as I know from the news I've read, they haven't found who did that. I think the person that was carrying the bombs and placing them was better prepared than a lot of people that didn't have masks over their face that were actively trying to hide their identity. But that was real. There really were pipe bombs placed in and around Washington, D.C.
Okay. Like I say, I saw one report, but I didn't see any follow-ups, and I wasn't able to confirm that anywhere else. But yeah, I think, of course, one big change with these guys, though, is they weren't wearing masks, and they were, they're on video all over the place. Sometimes they're taking their own videos of themselves. So from that standpoint, I don't know what a lot of them were thinking. Although there were clearly some people that were there specifically to riot as opposed to just rally. And then I think there are some people that probably did get kind of swept up into that who didn't have anything and just looked like goofballs who were there. But
Well,
still, once you go into the government building through a broken window, you have to recognize that you're kind of escalating things to a different level.
okay. So you said that some of these descriptions were amusing and that they were goofballs. And I mean, in some ways, it was pretty ridiculous that these people were making selfies, taking selfies, and making videos to put on their social media when they're obviously breaking all kinds of laws.
Well, people take selfies of themselves breaking laws all the time. That's
Okay.
not an isolated thing to this event.
No,
But what I'm saying about it being a little bit amusing is, uh, all summer long they didn't call those Nancy Pelosi rioters, or they didn't assign looting during Black Lives Matter
what's a
rallies.
Nancy Pelosi rioter?
That's what I'm saying. They attribute this group of people specifically to Trump. They're Trump supporters at the rally, but the people that were there,
That's a
who I
rally.
think are also Trump supporters, uh, were there before Donald Trump even showed up. They went to Washington with equipment and with things that they were planning. It was well planned. And if Donald Trump had not even come out and given a speech at all, those people were planning that attack. So there's the narrative that that would not have happened if he had not gotten up and given a speech. And that's actually kind of the preamble to his impeachment this time, is that he incited this riot. And we'll come back to that in a second, because I don't think you can say he is in the clear. But
Well, he's already been impeached for that. So I think that's sort of a.
well, he got impeached before for what I think a fair number of people would say was just nonsense.
Well,
They
a
can
fair
impeach
number
him.
of people thought the election was rigged and was why they stormed the Capitol. So the idea that a fair number of people thought, I just don't see me ever saying that phrase in order to justify anything.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, you just said that a fair number of people thought that the Russian investigation was invalid. It was not appropriate. It was hoax. It was.
Well, I would say that the evidence would prove that that is accurate. It was a hoax. And a fair number of people on the left, Nancy Pelosi is still calling President Trump illegitimate in 2020,
Okay.
even though the Mueller
Hang on,
investigation was over.
hang on. You're all over the place. So let's
Well,
try.
you're bringing up some stuff.
I
from
didn't bring
before.
that up. You did. You started talking about
All
Nancy
right.
Pelosi riots. So let's calm down for a second. And I just want to get the first question I asked you that I don't think you've answered yet is, how do you describe what happened on January 6th, 2021?
Some rioters who were intent on breaking into the Capitol broke into the Capitol, and from apparent images, they looked like they were planning on taking hostages. And
Yes.
I don't know if they were planning to do more than that, but it certainly looked like, they were not just there to disrupt things. They looked like they were there to do maybe some physical harm to elected officials.
Okay. Well, that took quite a bit of time before you got to that, which seems like the most important thing that happened on January 6th, 2021. Some people really stormed into the Capitol, and it looked like there could have been some really bad things that happened.
Right.
They built a hangman's noose, hanging, what do you call that?
Gallows.
A gallows that looked like it was functional. I mean, you and I have done a lot of building in the past. Those were like, I don't know, 4x6s or 6x6s that they
Yeah, I
brought
don't
in.
know. I didn't actually see any pictures of that.
Okay. Well, we can post some down below, but they built a platform and the real gallows, so that looked like that was functional. And like you said, we saw people with zip ties, hand restraints. They were chanting things like, Nancy, come out, Nancy, and hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. So it was really just a terrible, the breach of security. What could have happened was disastrous. I mean, to have, let's be clear though, 5 people did die.
Yeah, although I'm still not clear what happened to 3 of them. If they had heart attacks, or they weren't killed as a result directly from the riots. The police officer clearly was, the woman was shot, and then there were 3 other people who died during the event, but were not apparently injured. So I don't know what that means.
Well, I suspect what happened is what you just said, was they probably had heart attacks during the event. There was a lot of stress, and it looked like a lot of these people weren't used to going up and down stairs. So
they looked like Americans.
The fact that there were 3 heart attacks, which is probably pretty high for a public event.
Right.
But definitely one woman was shot and 1 policeman died as a result of the violence that was done to him. So, it was terrible, and it could have been much, much worse. So,
yeah, if you look at the images, I think that the police, at the point where people were actually breaking into the chambers, I think those guys showed some restraint and just not opening up fire on a lot of people. I think a lot of those protesters had a really good chance of being shot, and they're lucky they didn't.
Well, I don't think it has a whole lot to do with luck, but
I think if those officers, they were clearly justified if they had chosen to open fire on those people that were breaking into the chambers while there were still elected officials in the chambers. Like I say, they are, maybe the word fortunate, that the police did not open fire on them at that point.
Yeah, I don't think we have time to talk about that on this episode, because I want to get to the causes of this. But yeah, let's keep that in the back of our mind. Why did this storming of the Capitol, how was that allowed to happen? And why were not more people shot in the taking of it? It seems like if you look at other similar events over the last couple of years, it seemed like these people were afforded a lot of almost courtesy in their coming into the building.
I think that's a nonsense word.
Okay, let's leave that for now, and let's come back to this. So the way you described it was some people rioted.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that that's a fair description of a whole lot of protests that have gone over this year.
Okay.
There were a lot of protesters. There were thousands of protesters on the mall.
Okay.
There've been 200 arrests for people who broke into the Capitol. So there were not 100,000 people who stormed the Capitol. There were a limited number of people that were at the protest who did.
Okay. So it sounds like you're being a little bit sensitive in trying to separate the Republican rally that we had, that was started that day by President Trump, a Republican, and then the march to the Capitol, and then the ensuing violence.
I think I'm being accurate in the same way that you would not say that all the Black Lives Matter protesters were looters and rioters. There were big protests all summer long with a limited number of people in those protests that looted and rioted.
Yeah,
right?
Let's not do too much whataboutism.
No, I'm just saying that you can't you can't lump everybody at a rally or at a protest with a limited group that does destructive behavior.
I,
And
I,
that's the same across all protests.
okay. I'm not talking about all protests, though. I'm not.
No, but you kind of are separating this one out as something different. And I'm
I
telling
think
you,
this is pretty different.
yeah, but there are a great number of similarities. And if you can't see that, then you're kind of missing a picture of what's been going on for a year now.
Okay, so I understand that you want to not talk about what happened on January 6th because
That is not true at all.
okay,
We've been talking about it all. That's all we've been talking about.
well, in a way,
Yeah, you keep, well, the problem though is you keep like parsing this that I'm trying to protect people. And it's like, no, I'm giving you a picture that this is just like other big political rallies where you can't lump all of them into one big group.
okay,
We've talked about and clarified that there were specific individuals that were there to cause trouble. There were a whole lot of people there that were not. But to your point, and I'll give you this 100%, none of them would have been there at all except for Donald Trump.
okay,
So the entire rally at its core, the thousands of people that were there in the first place were only there because of Donald Trump. And so he is 100% responsible for the setting. I'll say that. Uh, like I say, there were people that were there ahead of time with the intent to do harm, but they would not have had the cover if Donald Trump had not had that rally on that day, really for no reason.
okay, all right. So, so what Trump did and the attack, in your mind, are completely independent.
No, I just tied them together.
Well, you
Uh,
said they took advantage of his his rally on that day to do their bad activities. You didn't actually say that Trump caused them to storm the Capitol.
no, and I don't know that. I think that may be a bridge too far, and
Yeah, I would
that's where I
assume.
think we may differ. Is that you probably look at his speech and say, well, certainly the Democrats in Congress look at his speech and say this was clear incitement, but I would look and say he used the language of politicians that politicians use in all their speeches, and it only becomes incitement after the fact.
Well, okay. I, yes, but I think there's more to that. But I want to take a step back and just admit that if I thought that the election had been rigged, if there were bad software in machines, if dead people were voting by the thousands, if I thought there was nefarious counting going on, I would storm the Capitol and try to take back my government.
You would.
I would. I mean, right? If you thought that the whole election process had broken down, you would want to take your government back, right?
Yeah, but uh, not by force.
Well, do you see any other option? I mean, if what Trump was saying that morning, January 6, 2021, if what he was saying was true, wouldn't that be like cause to fight like it was 1776?
No.
You don't think so? You think people should go back and, well, just have to try again next election cycle? Although the Democrats have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the presidency. What will change over the next couple of years?
No, you go through the process. Uh, you go through elections just like we always have.
But don't you see that that seems like if the elections are broken and you're saying you have to go through more elections, I just don't see the outcome changing.
Well, let me put it in this phrase, because no, I don't think most Americans think that at all.
Think
I
what?
think that I think most Americans would still say that there's a process that you go through, and you still use elections. You just get more people on your side to change things. Now, if it gets to the point where you think uh, that somebody's a dictator or there's martial law, or you think that uh, perhaps there's some physical threat to you, people would turn around. But as an example, so back in 2016, I think there were a whole bunch of Democrats that thought that the election was thrown by the Russians. That was a narrative that continued for a long, long time. And even
Well,
at the
no one said that the election was thrown, but people believe that there was influence from Russian and probably other governments as well. There
no,
probably were.
it was more than that, because all of the Democratic leadership continued to call Donald Trump's election illegitimate for years. And they had a probe about whether the Russians had somehow influenced and altered the election for Donald Trump. But there wasn't any violence.
No
People
one
were
claimed
marching.
what you're saying.
People were marching in the streets. If you don't remember,
I do
all the little
remember
pink
that.
hats and everybody that were marching,
That was
because
not about overthrowing the election. It wasn't about the illegitimacy of Donald Trump. It was
it
not.
was.
It was called
I
the Women's March. It had nothing to do with Trump being an illegitimate president. That was not what that march was about.
that was well, it was certainly the whole Mueller fiasco
Well, the
was.
Mueller fiasco actually resulted in lots of um, indictments and confiscation of money and people going to prison. So it wasn't a fiasco if you're looking at it from a law enforcement perspective.
Well, that's your take.
What
From
do you
the other
mean?
side
That's
of
the truth.
no,
You can't
from the
argue
other
with
side of the
that.
fence. No, listen, from the other side of the fence, there were a whole bunch of minor characters who were indicted on technical charges. And
That's
then
the only way you can indict people on technical things. Those are called
and
laws.
then the Mueller team was hoping that they would turn on the bigger fish, which would be Trump. And they didn't, and it ended up with a bunch of nothing. So
No,
this is just,
you can't
no,
say
it's
it
just
ended
too.
up with a bunch of nothing. Okay, let's just be clear that on this channel, we're not going to be so hyperbolic that we're going to say the Mueller probe did not result in indictments and, hundreds of $1 million being confiscated from illegal deals. That's not a bunch of nothing, okay?
It is not a bunch of nothing.
Okay.
That is true.
Okay,
But that
there
is
are
not
people
what.
that will
But I'm going to tell
interpret.
you right now, that was not what the Mueller investigation was set up for.
Well,
You could say, okay, look at it this way. Bill Clinton got impeached for the Monica Lewinsky stuff, but that started out as a Whitewater investigation. So would you say that the Whitewater investigation was a success because it found out that Clinton lied under oath about a sexual tryst?
Was the Whitewater justified in pursuing everything they could in order to find a consensual sexual relationship that ended up having the president lie under oath? No, I'm going to have to say that that's probably a change.
That's right. You're right. It started out as an investigation into Whitewater, and they found nothing to indict the Clintons about anything with Whitewater. So from that standpoint, that special counsel was awash. They did not find what they were looking for, but they still ended up finding a crime in that President Clinton lied under oath about a sexual tryst that he had with an intern, but that had nothing to do with it. But technically, he was guilty of a crime. So therefore, that special counsel was all worthwhile. That's kind of what I'm saying here.
No, no, no.
Is they
Hang
caught
on.
a lot.
Hang on. We're talking about the investigation, Mueller investigation. What
Right.
you're arguing is that that should not have happened because that was a fiasco. Investigations aren't fiascos. Investigations look for what happened to try to find the truth.
Then the whole Clinton special prosecution was also successful. I'm saying that when it steers off course from what it's actually looking for, it's gone too far.
Oh,
But
okay.
back to our
let's
topic
just be
today.
clear about what you're equivocating. Clinton lying
Michael
under
Flynn,
oath.
yeah. So Michael Flynn got arrested and was found guilty of lying under oath.
Because he didn't want his wife to find out that he had a consensual sex life in the Oval Office?
No,
What did he lie about?
he did not confer with the Russians. He did not do anything with the election with Russians.
Wait, he admitted to being guilty.
Yes. We can talk about this more, but when somebody says, "Hey, you said that we met on a Thursday," we actually met on a Wednesday.
Is that how you characterize Flynn's guilty plea?
That's how the FBI characterized his guilty plea. The agents that interviewed him said, "We did not think he was meaning to lie. He made some errors in what he told us."
Oh, okay. I think in order to get back on the tracks here, you've gone into a few different places where you and lots of Republicans see
but
things.
see, the thing is we go off into these other things because you clarify or you try to shade the discussion in a partisan way.
No,
when it isn't.
That's not true. I tried to shade it with like a level of factual information that like Flynn pled guilty. You're not taking that back. And it wasn't about whether he met for coffee on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. That is not what he lied about meeting with the Russian people. So I just want to be clear that let's not talk politics and partisanship. Let's talk about truth. And so that leads to we're probably going to go over on this and Zoom is going to cut us off. But I want to talk now about the causality of the January 6th Capitol event. So,
sure.
So we can already agree that not everybody was there to kill people.
Well, now I would stop you right there, because the way you just said that, okay. I think we can agree that not everybody was there to kill people. The reality and the fact is, I don't know if anybody was there to kill people.
Well, they were shouting that, "Hang Mike Pence." I mean,
so you think everybody at that rally was there to hang somebody, to hang Mike Pence?
I just said that the one thing that we're agreeing on is not everybody there was there to do damage or kill people or take hostages. There was
and what I'm telling you is, when you phrase it that I'm sure that not everybody was there to do that, you've already changed the dynamic of the discussion, when the reality is there were thousands or tens of thousands of people there, and there were a tiny percentage that looked like they were actually intent on breaking into the Capitol and potentially doing some harm to people. When you start expanding that to saying, yeah, I'm sure there were some people that weren't there to kill people, that already puts that in a different biased viewpoint.
Well, I'm going to be sorry to have to burst your protective bubble, but when people talk about January 6th, 2021, they're not going to talk about the tens of thousands of people that met quietly and politely and had a nice little speech with Trump. That's not
Right. Right. And I don't think that that is where the narrative should be. But at the
okay.
same point, I don't think that you should say that there were 10,000 people at a rally and a few of them probably didn't want to kill people. That makes it sound like there
No,
was a
I said it
rally.
the other way. I said that not everyone was there to kill people. That it's a few people that were there.
That last part is what you left off.
You didn't let me finish the sentence.
Now go
You
ahead.
said I want to stop you right there in the middle of my sentence. All right,
Yeah.
let's just, you're going to have to get over the fact that January 6th, 2021 is going to go down in history as one of the worst uprisings, riots, and it started at a Trump rally and it marched, which was called March for something.
I don't even know what it was called.
Trump's March of Freedom, or it had, March was in the title. So Trump planned this. I assume he organized and had it paid for, and advertised it for weeks. Meet me in Washington D.C. January 6th. It's going to be wild.
So you think Trump paid for that?
Well, I mean, not Trump. Trump doesn't pay for anything. So no, not Trump personally, but I think it was, well, it would be interesting to find out exactly where all the money came from in order to hold that. Probably our tax money, taxpayer.
No, I
money.
don't think it could possibly have been tax money. There are,
You would be surprised at what possibly couldn't happen over the last 4 years that actually did.
well, that's a vague statement, but you can't just hold a political rally. There's not a mechanism for taxpayer money to pay for things like that.
All right, well, let's find that out. We'll do some research and report back here. But my point is that this is going to be a day that goes down in history as a Republican rally that turned into a riot. And
I think that that's factual.
And that's the way that I would describe it. And there were lots of just pure-blooded American Republican patriots that were in the Capitol building.
I think that there is some truth to that too.
Well, I don't think there's some truth. I think it's either true or it's not true. And I think we have lots of evidence of just regular white people, going into the Capitol and walking around like they're tourists, not getting killed, and then getting back on the plane and flying home and sort of shocked and surprised that they're on the FBI wanted list.
Yeah, I think there probably are some people that are like that.
Yeah, and that's in my entire point. But the question now, and maybe we should stop here for this video and talk about what comes next, because I'm really curious to see in your mind what you think is going to happen with Trump and the Republican Party, because it seems like it's got some major soul searching to do.
Well, before we leave, with your specific topic for this one is cause and effect. Again, I think that you and the Democrats would probably say that Trump, in fact, I think you did just say that Trump orchestrated this or he planned it. And it's like, no, he gave a speech at a rally. He invited those people to the rally. And the purpose of the rally was to show a big force that Americans don't agree with the way things are going. Now, of course, you and I both agree that, and we've talked before, that this case was settled in the courts. It was over. The fat lady had already sung her song, changed into her regular clothes, and went home for the night. And Trump was still pushing this narrative that somehow we can undo things.
He's still pushing that. I want to talk to you next about what do you think is going to happen this week at the inauguration, because there are a lot of people that are saying that this isn't over.
But the backside of that, or the second part of that comment, is when politicians say things, if it results in violence after the fact, or if somebody listens to their words and then interprets that to mean something else and create some violent effect, what culpability does a politician have? And I think that from that standpoint, trying to say that Trump is responsible for the actual breaking in of the Capitol and the violence is untrue.
Well,
So you
we have
can,
a way of answering that question. It's called a trial. And there is no absolute truth that can determine whether or not the person is guilty or not guilty without a trial.
no, that, well, there's precedent for all of this because there have been political violence in the past. And for the most part, politicians have great leeway with what they can say and what actually goes as far as cause and effect. So politicians all the time use language like, you got to fight for this. It's a struggle. You got to show some force. You got to, Maxine Waters said, you got to push, you got to surround people in the restaurant and push on them. If somebody had actually instigated some violence against some Republicans based on that, would she have been culpable? And it's like, maybe, because those were pretty harsh words. But I think in specific legal terms, no, she didn't actually tell them to physically push people. She said to push back on them.
Well, look, okay, yet again, it's a little bit of whataboutism, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a speech that led to an insurrection. So there's going to be a trial. And of course, with all
I don't know
trials,
that there will be a trial. We'll have to maybe do a separate blog on the impeachment and what does that mean.
well, that's going to be something that could happen next week. So we'll talk about that next. But precedent doesn't get you to go to prison or not. It's the trial that does that. So
no, but trials are based on precedent. And so, Steve Scalise and the Republican baseball team got shot up by a guy who was a big Bernie Sanders supporter. And he specifically listed a bunch of quotes in his Facebook page about things Bernie Sanders had said about Republicans and how dangerous they were. Is Bernie Sanders responsible for that guy shooting them? No, Bernie Sanders.
Look, was there a trial
For that guy? Yeah. Well, no, there wasn't, because that guy got shot. He was killed by the police.
Okay.
But in the after effect, should Bernie Sanders have been, put on some kind of trial? And the answer is no, because he didn't tell that guy to shoot anybody. He didn't tell that guy to do those things, even though that guy interpreted what Bernie Sanders said to give him justification for acting.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, rather than you just telling us what the outcome of the trial should be, let's talk about that a little bit, pros and cons on whether or not Trump should be culpable in these events. And we can talk about whether or not he knows that politicians can talk in incendiary language and not be held responsible, and see if that was part of his plan. But I think we're out of time for this. And let's take it a little bit seriously, though, because if we don't resolve this, it will continue to happen.
I think this was a one and done. I think Americans saw this, and Americans across the board condemn this, and the people who did it are all going to go to jail. So the consequences are there.
All right, so this will be interesting. So I'm starting to get a glimpse of what side of the Republican divide you're going to be on. But let's talk about that in the next episode.
All right. I'll see you next time.
All right. See you later. Take care.